Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. What's going on, Sean?
We finally get to talk about basketball and actual things happening. We have training camp upon us. So much fun.
All
Let's
right,
do it.
We've got Sean Cunningham, and of course we have Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I am good. I'm excited for the season to be underway, and yeah, it's been a fun couple of days getting back in the swing of things.
Awesome. Okay, so for those of you who are joining us live, we're live here on YouTube today. Hi, friends. Make sure that you're asking questions and making comments. If DB is in here, try to make things as awkward as possible for Sean.
No need.
Yeah, it should be fun. We've got some video clips we're going to play out today. All three of us have been at Media Day. We have also been at day one of training camp, which happened today on Tuesday. And so we've got lots to talk about, all kinds of stuff to talk about. But let's start with the business side. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber, that would help us. That would be amazing. So those are two things. Also, we're about to crank up coverage. We're going back to 2 days a week here on the pod. We're writing nonstop and all that stuff. So you need to become a premium subscriber because I think starting on Wednesday, I'm going to start gating content. It's just time. And for those of you who have been along and got some free content here for many months, we're going to start gating more content, and you're going to have to be a premium subscriber in order to get some of that content. It's just the way that it is. Gas prices are $6 a gallon. We got to drive to and from the arena all the time. Also on that, if you do have interest in becoming a sponsor of the podcast, that's also down in the link down below. You can become a sponsor of the Kings Beat podcast. So if you own a business or help make decisions on a business, jump on board with the Kings Beat. We're doing good work here, and we also have to pay the bills, turn the lights on, turn the YouTube channel on. So let's get to this. This is exciting, and I don't know about you guys, but just like this year feels a little bit different, and a little bit because of this.
Regardless.
Does that concern you?
No. Ah! I love it.
Sean, Tuesday overreaction. Tuesday
That was
overreaction.
unnecessary.
Tuesday
Completely,
overreaction.
Scared the crap out of me, to be honest.
completely unnecessary, and he doubled down with a "let's go," as Mark Robertson has pointed out in the chat. No, I mean it's fine. It's you want your players to match the intensity of your coach, and maybe your coach to match the intensity of your players. And what better way to do that than let out a primal yell and like just the most heated kind of I don't know, emotion of. I mean, sometimes it just feels better to yell. You should try it, Brenden. Give it a go.
Oh God, why me over here?
I don't know that Brennan can do it.
He's
This
been
is, this
I
feels
think we're
like,
gonna hold
Sean.
off.
This feels like Dead Poet Society. That's what it feels like.
He
The
hasn't
barbaric
seen that movie,
Yelp.
though.
Yes.
Yelp.
Yeah.
What's a
that's
yell,
what-
buddy? Yelp would be like something meek, yeah.
Yeah, but no. Going back
was
to
not
the
me.
going back to the movie, it's a barbaric Yelp.
Oh, that's true.
That's how he phrases it.
Captain,
So-
my captain.
Yeah, so what we're asking, Brendan, is for you to stand up on top of your desk and yell. I mean, it is what it is,
I think we're gonna pass on that one. I will say, Mike Brown's energy he had at the presser, he also had at training camp today. He's just so vocal at training camp, and that energy seems to be a definite theme with Mike Brown.
Yeah, I think
If,
if... Go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, go ahead, Jay. I was gonna say if somebody hasn't seen it, and I know it's been on there, I just had an opportunity to post it on my social channel because I was wanting to filter through a lot of the video. It was really fun to watch, and him slamming into the wall after running his coach's sprint, just my spirit animal right there. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think I have it in my phone as well. It's one of those things that when you reach a certain age, you can run up and down the court, but you can't stop at the end of the court. And that's where Mike Brown was. It was like, oh boy, like here we go. And he just jumped into the wall and had a good time with it. Yeah, there seems to be a good vibe with this team right now. But
by the way, I think Billy Idol called that the rebel yell. Yeah.
The rebel yell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Brenden knows that
He
either.
definitely doesn't know that either. Yeah.
Nope.
Sean wants more.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we
That's all
go.
right. Brendan, we'll get him on something more current.
There we go. Yeah, I think the one thing about Media Day that I thought Mike Brown was pretty like reserved and almost like overly prepared, and was kind of like marching through things that he was going to talk about, and then someone across the gym yelled, which was part of, just so everyone knows what that was, at one of the stations that the players move along to, somebody asked them to yell, like roar like a lion, I think it was. And so that's what you were hearing. And that's what Mike Brown heard right in the middle of his press conference. And of course he responded with his own, which I thought it was a good moment, but I also think it kind of like snapped him out of like this weird robotic thing that we hadn't seen from him yet. And he started to really kind of hit the ground and start loosening up, and we got to see more of his personality.
What do you mean? You think he was over? You said over prepared, robot. Like I didn't get that impression necessarily. But what were you kind of taking away from that? What do you mean?
Yeah, I just think in the first couple of minutes of his press conference of his media availability at Media Day, was just kind of reserved, and he was kind of explaining what was going to happen, and this is what we're looking for, and it was sort of like we didn't see the big smile yet, we didn't see like sort of the funny laugh and all that stuff from him. I thought that he was just kind of like, he's still getting used to everybody, he's still getting to know all the media members, which it seems like there's a lot more media members this year than there ever have been, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it can be a bad thing. It is early. Sean and I know it's early.
Don't count yet.
Yeah, we won't. Yeah. So, that's what I mean. I mean, Brenden, did you remember back to the opening of his like sort of conversation?
Yeah, I don't know that I got all too much of a robotic feel from it, but I think I get the gist of what you're saying, of him being very, kind of by the book and just stereotypical like cookie cutter answers. And then maybe that broke out a little bit post Primal Scream. But I think that the theme that you got with him and both McNair, which I'm sure we'll talk about McNair's presser at some point here as well, because I thought that was pretty different, was not only culture, but how healthy and important they think the depth and the competition on this roster is. I thought that was something that they both really, really echoed and thought of that as a good thing. And there's very much a earn your role. Nothing's going to be given to you. And we'll kind of see what guys play themselves into.
Yeah, that's going to lead us to the second clip. So I actually want to play the clip that this is from today. It's not from, it's from Tuesday. It's not from Media Day. And we're going to play that really quick, and I'll let everyone hear that.
Oh, no.
You've talked a lot about defining roles. Do you come into camp with a decent idea of the roles that you want for these guys?
Yeah, everybody's had an individual player development meeting already in the off season. So everybody has a general feel of what we are looking for from each guy individually, hopefully coinciding with what our team goals are.
And with the talk of pace and a lot of guards or smaller guys on this team, do you anticipate some decent amount of small ball lineups?
We'll see. They got to earn it. You got to earn the right to be on the floor.
Hey, that was Brenden.
Yeah, Brenden asked. Yeah, that was a good question, Brenden. And I didn't expect Mike Brown to come out and actually tell us that they had individual player meetings and they had kind of like focused on some of this. I thought that was, to me, that's usually some of the stuff that they keep behind closed doors. But I thought it was intriguing.
Yeah, I tried to pull Kevin Herter and see what the theme of those meetings was, and I wasn't asking for specifics, but got that one shut down. Just said a lot of it.
I think Kevin Herter
for the team.
Kevin Herter is going to be your new Tyrese Halliburton, because you've already had 2 moments in consecutive days.
Apparently, Herter's a fun one though.
He's
really good.
It's dry humor and sort of deadpan, but I like him. You know, I actually, before he came into the media session yesterday for media day, I actually went over and introduced myself, and I told him that everyone says he's my son.
Yep.
And,
Almir
you know,
just pointed that out.
yeah, we laughed, and I said, you know, there's a lot of racism headed at, like, aimed at redheads, and like we're all, you know, all of the redheads are my children, of course. So anyway, he's a fun loving dude though. Brenden, why don't you explain your situation with him, because I think it's gotten it went a little sideways and a little weird, right?
Yeah, not only was my video sideways and I struggled to turn that the correct way, horizontal is how everybody needs to be putting up their videos, and I failed on that one, I'm not going to lie. But I think that I wanted to go in with a fun question, because I feel like it makes for entertaining content that the fan base likes. I think it's fun to kind of get to know these guys. I know some people roll their eyes at that. I think that there might be one or two people on this call with me that roll their eyes at those type of questions. But my question that I was going to ask, guys, if I had the opportunity, was who do you trust least with the aux or on the aux playing music? At the practice facility, guys still plug into an aux to play music. And
Do you even
so
know what
that
aux
was my
is
question.
short for?
Auxiliary. I got
Okay,
you.
just making
I
sure.
got you.
Making sure.
I'm not going to say
Just
that, though.
making
I'm not going to say that. People are like, oh, you should have asked them about the auxiliary cable. I'm like, I am not going to say that. But I asked a couple of guys before. Kevin Herter was the last guy that we got. Chima Monecki gave me a great answer. He said definitely not Matthew Dellavedova. He said that Malik Monk plays horrible music. Quinn Cook pointed at Chima. Guys all pointed at each other. It was I thought it was funny.
Chima said something like, Chima said something like, everything Malik Monk does is like awful.
I hate, yes, something like that. It was great. I thought that it was funny. And then I asked Herter, and I think my wording was, who do you trust least on the aux? And he heard Hawks and gave me the craziest look that I've ever seen. And I was like, dude, what's the big deal? Like, why? He was like, I can't answer that. And I'm like, why? What's up? And he thought I was asking him to bash on his ex-teammates, I guess. And eventually he understood what I meant by aux, but not my brightest moment, I guess.
You learn from it though, right?
Yeah, auxiliary is the new way to go.
No, you had it the right way. I just wonder how. Remind me, how long was the moment between him thinking you were saying Hawks to where he figured you were saying Ox?
It was like 20 seconds, but the funny
It
thing,
felt like an eternity.
There were other people around us, and I think that everybody somehow heard Hawks but me. And he even clarified after. He's like, "Who do I trust least on the Hawks?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm still hearing Ox." And it was quite the moment.
Yeah, you made it even more painful.
Yeah, I was like, well, we've got Chimo, we've got Malik, and he's like, what? What are you talking about? And we eventually got there.
And then today you had a moment, and it was hey, tell me about your meeting. Hey, piss off.
Yeah, pretty much. I just wanted a general idea. I didn't need specifics.
Yeah, so again, I thought it was interesting that Mike Brown let us in that, like, they've pulled each of these players aside and said, hey, look, here's your role. Like, we need you to live up to this. This is what we want from you. I think it's pretty intriguing. Like, again, I've done this a long time, and I don't remember coaches like literally saying, yeah, we've laid it down to each of these guys what they're going to do and what their role is. And I know that this happens every year and that they do have these conversations, but I didn't know that it would be that direct and almost like, you know, at the end of the year, they have what are called exit interviews for people who don't know. At the beginning of the year, I guess they now have like entrance like interviews. Like, this is, if you're going to be here, if you're going to play for the Sacramento Kings, you're going to play for Mike Brown, you're going to have these conversations, and we're going to get on the same page right away. So I found that to be intriguing.
That's not new, though. I mean, Dave Yeager did that. Luke even did it the moment he first got here. I will say, I think the message too is you may have a role, but it's roles evolve as the team changes and day by day. I mean, things can evolve, and I do want to stop short of that a little bit because I feel like it gives the impression that, hey, if you're KZ Okpala and you're coming on this team, that you've been told what your role is and not to deviate from that in any way, shape, or form. Like, there's there is an evolution to somebody's role and the way the team views somebody's role, and you don't necessarily have a ceiling on you, if you will. But it is important to understand at least what's expected of them. And to the point that James is making, I think the conversation is these individual conversations that Mike Brown has with the players and the coaching staff is having with these players is not all that dissimilar from what happened with Dave Yeager and Luke Walton and even Alvin Gentry when he took over. I mean, you're going to meet with your players, but it is helpful to have that understanding going into camp. And I think Mike Brown makes a much more bigger emphasis and time for it because of the fact of, I always poke fun at his OCD. I mean, this guy is a structured, disciplined type of coach, and you're seeing that play out.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, like, I assume that these things always happen. Like, every once in a while we get, I don't know, I think you guys probably saw it today with the Suns. They asked DeAndre Ayton if him and Monty Williams had clarified things after they had their incident at the end of the playoffs last year. And he said, no, I haven't talked to Coach all offseason. I still haven't talked to him.
Yeah,
so,
that was wild.
Yeah, that's wild, but that's what I'm saying. Like, there are times where you have players who you honestly feel like they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Like, they're coming into camp like, oh yeah, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And the team's like, dude, we wanted you to do A, B, and C, and you're doing X, Y, and Z. And we don't want any of X, Y, and Z. We want A, B, and C. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell me that? Like, reminds me of Dante Green coming into camp at 245 and saying, oh, I thought I was going to play some power forward this year. It's like, bro, no one told you were playing power forward. Like, you're just out of shape and you're using that as an excuse. But, like, those are the kind of the transitions, though, that I just felt like it was interesting that he put it out there that, yeah, like, we got a playbook here. We got a playbook for each of these guys, and they're going to have to live up to their end of the bargain. And if they do, then maybe there's more for them. And if they don't, then, like, shape up or ship out. It's just kind of an interesting way that he's handling it.
Yeah, I mean, we heard De'Aaron talk about how detail-oriented Mike Brown is and everything being structured down to, how many minutes you're going to spend in each certain spot and that sort of stuff. And I think that we've definitely known somewhat that is part of Mike Brown's personality, but getting to experience that even more so. And another one of the big things that we've seen a lot of these guys playing with each other throughout the last month or so, but just to hear them talk about how good that's been of being together for the last month for mostly everyone outside of the guys that were playing overseas for either Eurobasket or the FIBA World Cup qualifiers. Just, I think the importance of all of these guys having spent so much time together really seemed to shine, and something that a lot of them pointed out.
The one exception I thought to that, what you're saying about, like, the guys who have been here all summer, like, I felt like when we talked to Dellavedova's been in Sacramento for a couple of months, he said. He's been working, trying to make sure that he's ready. He actually said he's 100% healthy. He was kind of a breath of fresh air. Like, I haven't spoken to him before as, like, going in the visiting locker room and had conversations with him. Bright, like, fully engaged in what's happening. He has a very strong understanding of, the fact that he was out of the league due to injuries and because the NBA moved on without him, and he's kind of getting another opportunity. He did his research on Sacramento, but I don't know. The one guy that outside of that I was going to say that kind of said, I haven't been here and I haven't been part of this was Chimezie Metu. He goes, I haven't really been here all summer. I've been with the national team and doing other things. And I thought that was different. And I don't know if that will help him or hurt him when, it comes time to make cuts or to decide who's going to play in the rotation.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's worth pointing out that when they say that, like the all-summer kind of thing, it's, well, you end up meeting in Vegas for a little while, and as you mentioned with Dellavedova, right after he signed, he was in Vegas even before he signed. He basically came right to Sacramento. Someone like Chimezie Metu didn't. He was working with the national team. He was working in LA a lot. But once September rolls around, everybody's in town. Everyone's in town like pretty much right after Labor Day, unless you're at Eurobasket. So, and given maybe some special circumstances, that's the expectation, is to have your guys in the gym. And it's not necessarily a Mike Brown thing. This happened with Luke Walton. This happened at Dave Yeager. It happened at basically every coach since Rick Adelman, is where, the September before the all month of September before you open training camp is people will be here. That being said, like, doesn't necessarily mean you're more committed or anything that you're not. It's, you need to stay healthy. You need to get healthy. And to their credit, all these players are coming in with basically a clean bill of health. We knew the Keegan Murray thing was going to be fine. You're looking at Terrence Davis, wondering how his wrist is going to be. That situation seems to be fine. Dellavedova is one of those guys where, I've questioned. I don't know if the guy can play. We're going to find that out here in the coming weeks. We don't know if he has anything left in the tank. So, but it looks as if right now, he's even include the guys that came over from Eurobasket, Alex Len and even Domantas Sabonis. So they all look fresh. They all look in great shape. And I think I've had a lot of people talk to me off camera about just how great of a physical fitness that this team has in compared to seasons prior. And I didn't even have to ask about it, because you can, look at certain guys and, I always point out that sometimes the media makes too much of a deal about it, but Trey Lyles is noticeably thinner and trimmer and not as bulky. And the guys that came back from Eurobasket, even someone like Alex Len, looks a lot better. So yeah, this is fun. And you don't have guys coming in too bulky. You don't have guys coming in carrying too much weight or COVID weight or anything like that. You don't, as Kevin Herter pointed out today, you don't use training camp to get ready. You use the months and the weeks prior to training camp to get ready for training camp.
Yeah, I would say there are 4 people, and I want to get Brendan's take on this too, because Brendan has not gone through this process before. It really is like the first day of school, where everybody comes in with brand new clothes on, and you're like, some kids have grown a bunch, and some kids are still look identical that they did before. But for me, there are 4 guys that really stood out. Trey Lyles, he said he lost 20 pounds, and I'm going to guess that he lost more than 20 pounds. He looked incredibly thin. Alex Len told me he'd lost 15 to 20. He sort of settled in at 15, but he's yoked. He looks like he's hit the gym hard all summer long. Let me think. The other 2, Rashawn Holmes has clearly gained a bunch of upper body mass. And then the other guy is, Davion Mitchell. Like, he doesn't look like he has an ounce of fat on his body at all. He's like this little ball of muscle, and just from head to toe, looks like he's ready to be a bowling ball for 82 games.
Yeah, definitely noticed the same. I think Lyles was the one that stands out. I can't help but chuckle at the guys coming in and saying they lost X amount of weight, just because I feel like this is a common storyline this time of year, which it makes sense why, but it's just a funny thing to me, but definitely believable with what you've seen or what we saw with how Trey Lyles looked yesterday. And to your point about Davion, like, it's almost hard for me to tell, because I feel like most times that we saw Davion close up last year, like, I never failed to have a holy crap, this guy is just yoked moment. Like, I feel like it's always been the case, and it definitely could have become even more so. I also heard some people say, I think yourself as well, James, that Sabonis they thought looked a little bit more slim. And I think, I don't know how much I saw. I don't think I have a great eye for this stuff, to be honest. I noticed Lyles and Len a little bit after it got pointed out to me. But honestly, I don't have a great eye for that. Did you guys catch today that Herter said that they had a conditioning test? Is that atypical?
Yeah, it's very atypical. Yeah.
It's usually I think of it as a Miami thing.
No, every team will have one, and you get fined if you don't pass your test. I mean, there's certain benchmarks that they have and overall standards that they'll have for their players. So it's definitely how much it can vary from season to season based on your athletic training staff, your coach, but it's different. Dave Yeager had one as well. I'm not sure what the conditioning test was last couple of years under Luke Walton, but every team has one in place.
I'll tell you, we know that they did have one, though, because, like for the last few years, or there was a couple of years there where we got to see it, every time a Kings player came off the court after warm-ups, or like they would, before they went out for warm-ups, before they went out to shoot the ball, they would jump up and down on this big giant, like pad that was on the ground, and inside of that pad was like some sensors that could tell like acceleration, deceleration, what their max vert was jumping off the pad. And so they'd check them before they went out to go warm up. Then when they come off the floor, they would check them again. And so basically what they're trying to do is get a baseline for where guys are at cold, where they're at once they've warmed up, and see fluctuations throughout the season. So if you start to see a guy drag down, and I believe that they still have all of that, like being like it's in some database somewhere that they use to make sure that a player isn't overexerting himself, or we aren't starting to see like the beginnings of an injury or indicators an injury could be coming. And I certainly think that the Kings have like all of those things. They also have mobility tests. They test to see like the bend in someone's knee, the bend in someone's ankle. Like they literally like move their feet back and forth, and they have like a little ruler that has it looks like a Y, and they measure how far they extend and contract to make sure that they're like keeping an eye on, you know, joints and stuff like that for their players. There's a lot that goes into it, but yeah, I would say that almost every team in the league does have it. And my point was going to be that we even know that like a couple of years ago, Harry Giles showed up to training camp and they instantly shut him down, and they were like, okay, what's happening here? He already had knee swelling in like day one, and they were concerned. Now that could have been them, and it could have been them being more like you know, cognizant of an issue with him because he'd had a history of bad knee injuries. But I think overall there is like these things are pretty standardized with most teams. But I also think every team is a little different in how they sort of do it. Like I think even the Zion Williamson thing that we're hearing, what he has a clause in his contract now that his body fat and weight have to come in at 295 or under, or he loses like tens of millions of dollars off his deal. And that's crazy.
I thought he looked pretty fantastic, to be honest.
Well, yeah, that's year one.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like, yeah, if this is year one for sure, but coming off the years that he's had, you know, that was going to be a pretty paramount thing for him to come into camp in shape after foot injury. And big men in the foot injuries are always a thing. So, yeah, I thought he looked fantastic.
Okay, so we skipped over this at the beginning, and I'm not sure why we did, but it wasn't Mike Brown who opened up Media Day. It was actually, or was it?
No, it was Monty McNair.
It was Monty McNair. Yeah, that's what I thought. So Monty McNair came out, and we're going to play a clip here in a sec, but before we do play that clip, just what were you guys' assessments on Monty? Because for me, he looked relaxed and different than he has at any other point, but he also hasn't had an opportunity to be around the media that much because of COVID and like all the restrictions and all that stuff.
I thought it was a fine gathering. Yeah, he was comfortable. I think he was excited. I think he has a lot to be excited about because he's improved his team. Hopefully it can, in his case, can all turn into some success in the win column. But yeah, he has every right to be upbeat. They hadn't lost a game yet. There's no injuries. Nothing's going horrifically wrong. And he should be confident. He's got to be confident in what the additions that he made. To your point, James, about does he feel comfortable around the media? I think it is. I think, honestly, the tough part is when you have a guy like him who hasn't necessarily been, you know, in the spotlight a lot in this job, and right out of the gate you're starting off in empty room on podium and Zooms, and it's so impersonal. So I give him a big pass there. I want to see more of this type of engagement with the general manager of the team as you do in other sports, and it'll be fun to continue on. But at Media Day, yeah, man, that's about as good as it can get with a team's GM. I thought
a whole lot more comfortable. For sure. You notice it right away. He's a jokester maybe not out of nowhere, but like to another level with this one. There were 2 or 3 jokes thrown in there. I won't spoil any of them. I don't know what clip he pulled. He said, I mean, maybe there's just also an aspect of being more comfortable doing this. He mentioned both of you guys by name, saying, I know what to expect from a James Ham, from a Sean Cunningham. So I think it's maybe a comfortable of both. It's true. You never know what to expect.
Nope.
But yeah,
We're dodgy.
Very clearly more comfortable in a jokester.
And this in from Frankie Cardicelli.
Who's that?
From 1140.
There we go.
Not enough people are talking about how Brenden Nunes has added around 70 pounds of sheer muscle.
75, but okay, Frank.
75. Frank, I see you called him Frank. Touche.
Yeah, Frank.
Touche.
Once he turned 18, he was officially Frank.
That's right.
Once he turns 60, we go back to Franklin.
Yeah, and then Jeff the Lefty, how do I get info on premium subscriber? In the
You have
YouTube...
to subscribe to James OnlyFans, and that will get you the No,
there's not a James OnlyFans.
No, I thought
It's definitely down in the description, and then you can also go to thekingsbeat.com to find all that stuff. Yeah,
Help pitch in for a third boat.
Yeah, there we are. There we are. Okay, so let's play the clip. Let's play the clip from Monty McNair, because I think this kind of shows a little bit about where he's at, and also shout out to Deuce Mason for a very good question. I didn't know like whether we would get to this question or not, because Media Day is one of those things where there's so many people lobbing questions about everything out of left field, like nonstop. And sometimes questions like this kind of have a tough time fitting into the conversation. But shout out to Deuce for a good question, and we'll play Monty McNair right now.
During the final year of your deal, have you had any extension talks at this point, or is that something you anticipate happening at a later date?
Is my deal like on the internet or something?
That people talk about. A lot of fans are wondering, is Monty? I'm sure you see it on Twitter.
No, it's look, for me and my group, like, we're excited about what we've done. We're excited that Coach Brown's in here. I'm the GM right now, and I got a bunch of work to do, so I'm going to do that until they kick me out. And I hope I'm here for a long time. And I think with this team we put together, we're really going to start seeing that progress. It's taken a couple years for us to kind of continue to shape the roster and get guys around Foxy and HB and Rashawn, some of these guys that have been here. But I think for us, that's what we see our job as, and as long as we're here, we're going to do it.
As long as we're here, we're going to do it. Brenden Nunes, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, that's about a typical answer. I like that he started with a little bit of a joke. I every time I hear Foxy, I got to admit I'm wondering where this started from. Like, did Monty just feel comfortable enough to just throw that out there and it just became a thing, or what? But no, I thought that McNair, again, definitely seemed comfortable. I think that that's a prime example. And I mean, what else can he say? Like, we're going to do our job, and yeah, that's about it until we're told not to anymore.
I genuinely believe him. Like, yeah, in a perfect world, would he and Wes Wilcox like to have their future, figured out before the start of the season? Sure, I guess. I think it'll figure itself out. I really do. Yeah, there might be some, as I think in the last podcast or the one before that, it was a factor cap. I think Brenden talked about the success of this team and how it could, the wins and losses, and how it might affect decisions that were made for the front office, and particularly with Wes and with Monty McNair. So I said I don't think it's necessarily that black and white, and I think again you're building for something that's beyond this season. So I think they should be confident in the work that they did. Now, if they had an off season like last season, then we shouldn't even be talking about an extension, because I think the answer would be no. But this offseason, again, they should be very, very confident in what they've done. I have liked the pieces. The draft has sort of spoken for itself since they've been here, even going back to the Tyrese Halliburton and being able to turn a pick that ultimately fell to you at 12, right? 12, and turning that into an all-star caliber player in Domantas Sabonis is pretty legit, and it might be still too early to claim victory on Davion Mitchell and Keegan Murray, but it's certainly trending that way. So I like the pieces, and again, I like to point out that it's not like ownership just lets them, they're as much a part of all the decisions as they are. So ultimately, you need an ownership sign off for a lot of these things, and they do that. You do have the control to go out there and make moves, but ultimately, you're going to have somebody go, "Yeah, we like that move," or this one might need a little bit more kind of thought behind it. So I feel like ownership and them are ultimately on the same page, and they're just as culpable. So I think it'll figure itself out. I really do. So I ultimately do believe Monty McNair when he's saying that, I've got a lot of work to do, because that's true. Like, the job is never done, and it's easy to get lost in your work. It's those lulls that all of a sudden hit you, and maybe the All-Star break has passed, trade deadline has passed, and then you go, oh gosh, now we're a month or so from either saying 1, 2, 3 Cancun, or we're looking at a postseason playoff appearance, or possibly a play-in tournament, because those are separate. So I just don't think it's something that they're going to – it might be in the back of their mind, but I think it's easy to distract yourself with the job at hand. And look, no one likes to be a lame duck, but I think it affects coaches ultimately more than it does GMs, because you have players who have to buy into your coaching system and you as a leader ultimately. And if you don't have the backing of management behind you, it's easy to tune that type of coach out. Whereas players have to have a belief in the front office, yes, but they don't have to have – they're not playing for the general manager. They're playing for the coach and themselves and the job, and you get it, but they don't necessarily play for the general manager. So a lot of times, if you think of like Moneyball, Billy Beane doesn't in the movie, and this played out in real life as well, didn't want to have relationships with players. He wanted other people to have those relationships, because it makes it easier to cut them, trade them, move them on, whatever, and make business decisions. So I think it's easy for him to get lost in the work.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy job, and it's not over. And he continues to say he's going to be aggressive. He knows that the roster isn't built. And what I'll keep saying is that, like, look, I think he's done a tremendous job of rebuilding this thing. And we'll get to a clip from Harrison Barnes in just a minute, where we talk about just how much he has rebuilt this thing. But you're still left with that idea that, like, this is a good build, but we still don't know who and what they are. We won't know who they are until maybe 20, 30 games into the season. And you have this feeling like there may have been one more move that needed to be made. Not that wasn't made or that was on the table and they didn't do, but one more move that would have made you feel more confident in what's happening here, that would have taken them from a potential, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 team to a team that, could move up to the 4, 5, 6, 7 and like stick in that range. And so, like, look, I get it. He knows he still has more work to do. But I also would take the devil's advocate role in this and say, look, if we get to the end of the season and somehow he's built a winner in Sacramento, and other teams can come at him because he's not under contract, and he's the one who flipped this thing around and turned it around and built something different, he's going to be able to write his own ticket somewhere. And it might not be Sacramento, and that will be on ownership. That will be their fault if they let the guy who turned this thing around get away. And so, like, look, at this point, he's probably looking at it and thinking, I did a pretty good job. And if I have enough leeway to make 1 or 2 more moves as we move along during the season, I could put this thing over the top. And then I do get to write my own ticket, being in Sacramento or somewhere else. And, to quote the great David Stern, life is a negotiation. And I think we're not to the negotiation phase with him yet. And that's on that's on ownership's fault, who haven't actually extended him and made it so we don't have to have these discussions walking into a season.
Well, and maybe it's a mid-season thing, right? Like, maybe if they see the progress with this team, I think there's an idea that this roster is a lot better fit. Like, Fox at his exit presser talked about length and athleticism, and then needing that. And then at Media Day is talking about how this team has length and shooting. And that's what they have now on this roster. So it's easy to look at it and say that it's much improved. I would be one to say that as well, but maybe it's a mid-season thing of once we actually see this all work together. I think that maybe you can strike a balance there, but where I've always stood is if you're going to let him make a decision as drastic as trading Tyrese for Sabonis, then I'm of the opinion of putting him on the same timeline.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so I think that almost everything was positive at Media Day, and I don't want to make it sound like Harrison Barnes wasn't positive, but there's been like some sort of misunderstanding here that we're trying to run Harrison Barnes out of town, and that Harrison Barnes is a guy that we think should be traded now. And that's just, it's not the case. What is the case is that Harrison Barnes is going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. He has tremendous value on the open market right now, and it's going to be tough for the Kings to bring Harrison Barnes back. And I think some people think that we're just like throwing stuff out there, just like making stuff up, that Harrison Barnes hates Sacramento, or that's not the case. But like, you can only stomach losing for so long. And Harrison Barnes came into Sacramento as a player who had won a championship in the past, who had been on a winning program before. And this just hasn't been a winning program in his 3.5 years. So I'm going to play the clip of a question I asked Harrison Barnes on Monday.
After a season like last year, how difficult is it to just wash that away and forget about it and move on to the next year with all the ups and downs of the year?
I think you just look around. I mean, you can't take there's only a certain amount of people who were here last year who know what that experience is like, right? Everyone else comes from something else, right? Whether it's Kevin coming from Atlanta, whether it's Malik coming from, LA, whether it's Kent coming from LA, whether it's, Keegan coming from college, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people are coming with different mindsets and philosophies. So, last year, it is what it is. This is a new year. Everyone starts off 0-0, so it's on us to make the most of this opportunity.
Is it crazy to you that there's only 3 players, only you, Rashawn, and Fox, that are still here from 2 years ago at training camp?
Yeah. I mean, when I think about my tenure in SAC, we've had a lot of turnover. But nonetheless, it's always a talented group, and I think that, like I said, trying not to compare years, looking at every year as a different one. We have a lot of good pieces here, and like I said, Coach Brown is committed to the details. So that's what we're all looking forward to, kind of building from here on out.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll go to Sean. Yeah. Sean, what do you got? What do you got for us, Sean?
I was distracted by the melee going in the chat.
What is happening?
This is amazing.
People, do you need to get banned? People. Do we need to ban you people?
No, don't ban anyone. This is fantastic.
Temecula. I see Temecula. That's never a good sign.
Especially, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I mean, he's talking about a lot of the turnover. I mean, that's very much tongue-in-cheek. I think if Harrison Barnes was to write a book about his tenure in Sacramento, it would be a must-read and definitely a bestseller in the capital city. But it's just weird, man. Like, I bet if you pulled him aside and talked to him privately, which I didn't. I'm not trying to say that I did, and I know this, but I would imagine there's some surprise there that he's here in Sacramento. But I think he's more than happy to come back here because, one, he's a professional, and two, as he pointed out, he's looking at a lot of guys not just trying to snap this 16 season postseason drought here in Sacramento, but he's surrounded by guys that want to taste what it's like to play in the postseason. I mean, you just look at Davion Mitchell. Guys like Davion Mitchell will tell you all you would need to know about. I mean, that's all he thinks about is wanting to win and play in the postseason, and it kills him not to be able to play basketball during those months when the postseason's going on. So he only had 1 year of NBA experience. So he used that as a whole motivating point coming into the summer and wanting to play in summer league, that they wouldn't let him do it. And they sometimes have to save him from himself. So I thought Harrison even talking about just that way, how it's not we want to snap this postseason skid and get into the postseason because that's what we're paid to do. It's like, no, there's guys that legit want to know what it's like to have that type of experience. And you look around the room and there's the most talent that he's clearly had here in Sacramento. I think he was nice when he's talking about the talent that he's had previously, but it was just young, unproven question mark talent that, these people are talent, but can they play basketball? Can they be professional basketball players? Well, you have that now. You've got guys that are entering their prime, that are in their prime, and they're still in their prime. The people like himself, where it's maybe on the back end of his prime, but he's still got some absolute fantastic basketball left in the tank. And ordinarily, you'd like to see that as a part of a winning team and a team that's trying to make it into the championship rounds as opposed to a play-in tournament. So I think he's experienced a whole lot of things here in Sacramento, and I think this one might be among the most promising seasons he's stepping into, as opposed to maybe his second year, his first full season here in Sacramento.
Yeah, definitely see that. And I think that, like, when it comes to media day, and I guess I'm using the word vibes a lot because I feel like that's just what you can take in for media day, and it was so positive all around, and HB's was just weird. I don't exactly know how else to classify it, but it just didn't have the same energy in my mind as some of these other ones. And I get how his context has been probably frustrating from his point of view, like Sean was kind of walking through there. Like, he's been in trade talks, and a lot of that's from media or outside sources, not the Kings directly saying that. But I get how that can be frustrating, and going into this year, it just him being in a little bit of a weird spot, and potentially not even expecting to be here in the first place. But it definitely did stand out to me that, like, the energy around HB was just not the same in my mind as most of the other guys we talked to.
Yeah, it was different. And I think, to be honest with you, watching wind sprints today, because following the first day of training camp, they let us in, and they had this game that if they couldn't hit, I think it was 3 free throws in a row, that they had to run, like, to the end of the court and back.
Well, 3 players, 2 in a row.
I think
so if you were able to, it was 3 players for 2 in a row.
2 players, 3 in a row.
No. 3 players, each hitting 2 in a row, would end practice. If anyone missed, you had to run and start over. And then it went for so long that
they missed a lot of free throws.
They had to, they ran a lot, and they had to get into a moment where they had to find a new game, a new wager that involved the coaches running. So, it was fun. It's one of those old school tactics. I mean, you see it, and this is again,
high school.
High school. Maybe a Pop Warner thing, but it's a way to improve free throws, and I don't know that you're going to see it at the end of every practice, but it's very much a tactic that coaches will use in the early going of training camp. Hey, you don't have a whole lot of two-a-days. I think they're only going to do 1, maybe 2, and then you're off to the races in just your regular camp, and then you've got preseason and all that kind of stuff. So these guys got it pretty good, I think.
And HB was at the front for a lot of those runs. And
that was going to be my point.
My one thing is I think through all this, he's going to be a professional on the floor.
Yes. And he was the winner of almost every single sprint, and he was considerably further out ahead of everybody. He's in great shape. He's one of the older players in camp, and he just comes in, and, I think people asked Keegan Murray today, like, who are the guys who were always in the gym? And he said Harrison. That was the first one that he said. Either it was Herter or it was Keegan. I'm not sure which of them said it. But yeah, like look, he's here all the time. Like, you show up and he's here. You come back at a different time, he's here. So yeah, there is something to the fact that regardless of whether he feels 100% comfortable with his position here and what's happening here and how long he'll be here, he's going to be a pro about it no matter what. It's just, those are the tea leaves that, like, we're trying to express to people as we're, like, as we're covering this team, that this isn't just, hey, look, Harrison Barnes is going to be a free agent at the end of the year and you can re-sign him. There might not be that option. And the Kings need to take a gigantic leap forward and show not only him, but, players like Sabonis that they're for real, that they're going to start building something. And, that they can convince him to stay, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. There's a lot of scar tissue to get through here when we're talking about some players on this team. And again, like, it's only him, Fox, and Rashawn Holmes from the moment that Monty McNair took over in September of 2020. And to think about it, it's really crazy. That's all McNair's been running this franchise. And there's only 3 players left. Like,
Kent Bazemore too, right? Or no, was that Vlade? I forget.
No, they traded for... Yeah, but...
Baze was 2 years ago.
Yeah, but, he came back. Yeah.
Right. So, that would be like another one, I believe, especially because he was in the bubble.
Well, Lynn too, but those guys left and then came back. Realistically, there's only 3 guys that have been here all the way through, and it's an awkward situation. I think that would be the segue to like Rashawn Holmes. Rashawn Holmes seems rejuvenated and ready to prove everyone wrong about what happened last year and about how bad his season was, his off the court stuff, everything else. What were your guys' vibes with him? Because you guys got to spend a little time with him in the scrum where I had to go do an ESPN 1320 hit.
Yeah, the quote that I have that stood out from Rashawn when he was asked, like, do you just forget last year and move on or what? And he responded with, quote, I remember everything and I'm just ready to step back on the floor. Honestly, I'm getting antsy just thinking about it. I don't forget nothing, end quote. And he just was, I mean, you could feel that. Like, he seemed genuinely excited to get back out there. Obviously, last year was just a roller coaster for him with so much going on and both on and off the court. And I think that you definitely could tell he seems ready to get back out there.
Well, I was trying to think of the analogy. The roller coaster, if it was just a downhill roller coaster continuously.
Fair enough.
Because, I mean, you had high hopes. He played terrible. He had things off the court that was going on. Then he had the eye thing, and then he had to leave. I mean, I don't think there were many ups at all. And, in fact, I'm glad he's using his motivation. He was obviously vindicated in the stuff off the court, which is great. And his vision, as he says, is completely fine now. So that was kind of a scary moment that definitely gave you some pause in things could look like going forward for him and his playing future. I had to ask him. I think everyone was asking about last year, and he was spinning it towards the basketball court. And of course, we had to get into the other stuff as well. But I wanted him to be able to talk about that because, like I said, things were vindicated there. They're behind him now, which is hopefully behind him. Sounds as if they are. And I know he's always a very motivated player. Now you give him just a little bit of an ounce of adversity that he has to overcome, especially when he's used to, playing behind and earning his minutes as a reserve player. And I think he's hungry for the fact that he's got somebody like Sabonis. He doesn't look at him as competition. He looks at him as a huge asset on the team and one that he feels he can complement. Now, we all may disagree on how that looks like on rotationally and on the basketball floor, but he seems to think it can work either way, whether the two of them are on the floor at the same time. But that was a question I asked him as he came away. I was like, "Are you surprised to still be here?" And he's like, "No, I'm thrilled to still be here." He says, "Not really. Like, there's." He can pay attention to outside noise and hear all the rumors he wants, but at the end of the day, this is a place that he still identifies as where he wants to be. They made a commitment to him, and he wants to honor it.
Yeah, I think he's in a strange situation because like everything went wrong, like what we've talked about. Like forget that he actually had, I believe, one of his cousins passed away last season during the season. He got COVID during the season. He will wear goggles again because he's worried about getting his eyes scratched again. I know the off the court stuff right now is like backburnered and all that stuff. Like he's moved past it, and I'm happy for him that it's worked out in his favor at this point. But let's be honest, we're talking about a 5 or 6 year old. Those things don't typically just go away because of a court ruling. There's still a stress. There's still something that he'll be dealing with off the court for the next decade plus, because that's what happens when you have children and you share children with someone that you're no longer together with. And so I hope the best for him, and I hope that he's able to sort of put everything aside, because I do think that he's the type of player, an energy player that, again, if he's a big time role player for you, when you're asking him to be like your starting center and maybe your fourth best player or third best player, then you're going to have some trouble. But when you're asking him to be something different, to get back to sort of who he is as like this, fly around, hustle, crazy athletic big man who, yells and screams and, plays the game really hard, I think that he could be a perfect blend with this group. He could be one of those energy guys. We always think of the energy guy as your offensive guy, but your defensive guy who brings energy and brings, he's been the heart and soul of this team for a couple of years. And I think part of last season, how badly it felt was not only did you fire your coach 17 games into the season, but really you felt that team lost their heart and their soul. Like, and I think someone asked Mike Brown about like what the soul is of the team so far, and I don't think he really knows yet. It's a little early for that.
A bit.
Yeah, but Rashawn Holmes is a heart and soul guy. He's a guy that brings something different that you feel like in the locker room and on the floor, and I'm really hoping that they can get back to that so they can kind of have that person, that energy level that they rely on, even if it's going to be in a different role than it was before.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think they have an elite center rotation, and I think there's a different conversation to be had about maybe asset management and where you're putting your money when it comes to Holmes. But just if you're talking about that center rotation, you're going to have 48 minutes of having a really high caliber center on the floor. And I think that's a lot of value, especially when years prior, it felt like when the backup big came in, things kind of went south for Sacramento. So I'm definitely, it's a good thing. I think Holmes being accepting of that role and coming into it with the right mindset is definitely a positive, because he can have a pretty big impact even if he's only playing, say, 20 minutes or so. And I think of the same, kind of in the same light of these energy guys, I had something I was curious about. I wanted to ask you guys about, as since you're more experienced with this. I thought that there was a really drastic difference between Kent Bazemore, and Kent obviously is like somebody who's just seemingly great with the media. This is the first time I've interacted with Kent, and just gives phenomenal answers and was talking so much about culture, right? And kind of echoing a lot of the same things that Mike Brown said. And he spent so much time in these different teams that have a great culture and all this leadership and the importance of playing for one another and all that. And then you get a KZ Okpala, who was like the most short-winded answers I think I've ever seen. He got asked something about defense, and I think his full response was something like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do because that's what I do. And I'm just curious, like, does that matter at all? Or is this just media interactions? Like, how much does that matter to you guys as players that like are seemingly fighting for a spot on the rotation?
Well, one doesn't have anything to do with the other. Like, if you can play, you can play. It doesn't matter how strong your media game is. Think of like Marshawn Lynch in football. Like, the guy is extremely bright and intelligent, but he doesn't want to give you anything and doesn't want to play the media game, but you're required to by your league. I mean, it's part of the job. So I think KZ Okpala, coming from a Heat organization where they are a very strict organization from top to bottom with the freedoms that they have their players. Even when they speak to the media, it's even on their own time, or if their agency is setting it up, like they have their hands in everything. And KZ is not necessarily a player who was requested a lot by the media because he didn't play. He didn't really get opportunity as much. So this whole experience could be a little bit new to him. I think he might have been a little shy. I think also, we posted the video at fox40.com. It's on the YouTube page. I haven't shared it on social, but if anyone wants to watch it, it goes about not even 2.5 minutes. And I think it kind of caught some people off guard, thinking that because this is a group that has a lot of character to them, and I'm not saying KZ doesn't, but he obviously wasn't as eager to share it. But once it got about the first minute and a half in, I think he reacted to some of the questions a little bit better, and I kind of equate it to the way I interview a lot of high school football players and basketball players on our coverage at Fox 40, because they're shy, and when things like that happen, they're not used to talking to the media. It's a group of people, and when they've got the camera, it can be intimidating. So when I'm sitting there talking to a high school player, I just make sure that we're peppering them with questions. I keep them going. If I sense the interview is going wonky, I'll say, "Hey, man, what's high school like? What classes you have?" Where it has nothing to do with football, and you're just talking to him and trying to make him forget about that this is a media session. And I think that it actually worked, because the more, and I wasn't part of that session. I was out shooting something else and talking to some other people at the time. And I remember listening back to it, and Brenden, I know you were in there and you were part of it. I thought his answers got a lot better. And I think, he has a verbal crutch where he's a lot of, you know what I mean? And that's a very East Coast centric to Jersey and Philly and that type of area. And you could see that come through. I think he got a little bit more comfortable as it went on, but that's just one of those players that will have a shyness to the media. It won't really be completely comfortable in their own skin until they do it a lot more. And I think that can come, but you have to understand too, he's looking at this. He's got a job to make. He's looking at everybody around him as he might have a couple familiar faces on the team, but they're all competition. It's just a different type of mindset. So I think there was a little bit of shyness, a little unusual setting for him, and we'll see how it kind of evolves.
Yeah. First of all, he's from Orange County, California. So, so I get what you're saying though.
But
about,
you see
like,
the East Coast. You
lingo.
do see an East Coast influence for sure.
I do. The other thing I would
spend a lot of time over there.
Yeah, the other thing I would point out too, he went to Stanford. Like, this isn't a stupid guy. No. This isn't a guy with a low IQ. He's in a situation where, like, I mean, media day is overwhelming for almost everyone. Like, it's crazy. Like, especially for a guy who's never really like done an interview in Sacramento, he doesn't know anyone that's there. People are peppering questions all over the place. People are talking over each other, trying to get questions in. It's been like the last 2 days have been really aggressive as far as media questioning. And it's not as far as I don't mean the questions themselves as much as
who do you hate on the Hawks?
Yes. No, I mean as
who do you hate in the media, James?
No, I don't hate anyone. Like, yeah, but the way that the media like kind of goes at these guys, because we're competing with each other to get questions in, and everybody has their questions that they think are really, interesting, or that they want for some story that they're writing. But it is overwhelming. There is a lot of people just peppering you and talking over each other and like trying to get their voice in. And so it does end up becoming a bit of a cluster. And so I don't know. I think to answer your question, Brenden, like, Kent Bazemore is a seasoned veteran that knows how to walk into a room and own the media. And that's a good way to make a lot of money and a good way to get a very nice career after you're done playing basketball. But at a certain point, you still have to be able to play basketball at a high level, or none of that matters. And, we'll have to see how it works out, because I still think that there's still a couple of roster spots open and up for grabs. And, we don't know. Like, a guy who doesn't say anything in media day could make it over a guy who waxes poetically for 10 minutes and walks away and gives everyone a hug. I mean, like, both Sean and I are, we went over and talked to Kent off the record at different times. And, like, he's very receptive to us. He's known us from his previous stop here. It was nothing but love and, hugs and, talking about his wife and kids and stuff like that. So it's just different. We don't have a relationship with KZ, but KZ also doesn't have a relationship with us. And I don't really think that he's been put in a position where he has a relationship with any media and has that experience, just because of his path into the league and where he's at right now. I don't.
He looked like he wanted to bust everyone's ass, though. I mean, he just really did. Talking about KZ Okpala, like he really had a look that was fierce and pretty competitive, and it's kind of fun to see.
Yeah, and I'll just flash this up too from JG in the chat. Tristan killed the mic and wasn't an impact player for us. Yeah, that's very true.
Tristan had a legendary speech after they got killed by Minnesota on the road. He had a pretty great spiel. But I think the answer that I kind of just I think the answer I kind of just got from you guys there is that, like, there's a difference between how these guys interact with media is not necessarily representative of their personalities behind closed doors. And I think that's something that's also important for the fan base to know when they're seeing all of these clips and everything.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, Tyreek Evans is one of the guys that really pops into my head. Really struggled to talk to the media, to string things together. Like, I remember there's one point where he told us, hey, yeah, just so you guys know, I'm going to have, like, shockwave treatment on my plantar fasciitis here in like 3 weeks, and I'll be out for a while. I'll be probably out for the rest of the season. And we're looking around like, what are you talking about? Did you really just tell us you're going to be out for like the rest? And it took him like 3 weeks to get back. And media relations was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's saying something, like all this stuff. But then if you ever heard Tyreek rap, it was like, oh, this is totally different. Like he just flows and just like really good. And so like some of these guys are just not comfortable in the setting that we want them to be comfortable in. And that's hard.
I think one of the early, and I was kind of saying this in the previous months leading up to the season, is that this is a group of a lot of interesting characters, and I think that they all can, communicate well. I think that, they're going to be media darlings in a way because you have several that you'd want to hear from almost on a daily basis, and that they can articulate well, and they're funny, and the personality really shines through. And I think there's going to be some interesting stories and viewpoints and opinions on how they play. But what does it look like if you lose 6 straight, right? Like how does that shine kind of go away a little bit? So I hope not, because I think these guys, from the media standpoint, I think fans will like that too. You're hearing a lot about, how will they hold themselves accountable? How will they live up to the expectation of being professionals? And I know if a fan hears that and says it's the NBA, of course you should be professional. There's guys that have to learn how to be professional. I think a lot of these guys have already had that, fortunately, and have been the benefactor of some pretty good teaching along the way, because a lot of these guys are playing the part pretty well. And I think this is going to be a group of really good guys from that standpoint.
Even Chima Moneki, just like, well, he just has an energy. He just owns a room.
He's another level. Yep.
Yeah, he just like walks in like, I don't care. I've never been on the NBA level. I don't care. He just like,
when you have your own name on a chain,
and he was like that at Davis. I mean, I don't know if anyone. I know they're local, and they made the tournament when he was there, but I still feel like Sac State and UC Davis, when it comes to athletics over there, is still a mystery to a lot of people, even who live here locally, because they just don't gravitate to those athletics. And Chima was absolute character. He's the same kind of guy. He's a better version of it now, but he was just as confident, just as smart, and the kid's brilliant. He just really is. He's a very smart individual.
Yeah, I went to UC Davis, and I've never been to a football or basketball game there, or any other sport.
Shame on you.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, I mean, I went back late, and I have kids at the time and everything else. And so
you should take them to the Causeway. I think that would be fun for you guys.
Yeah, we haven't even taken picnic day. Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up with another episode of The Business of Basketball. Brenden, I think Sean and I, we've been through Media Day 5 million times. But I think we kind of, what was your takeaway from your first Media Day, your first day of training camp, and just like the overwhelming long day? Brenden had a phone meltdown. We are not going to mention who helped him save his phone because I don't want that person getting hit with questions about how to fix their iPhone on the internet for the next 6 months. But
now I really want to know. I don't even know this story.
Oh yeah, so go ahead, Brenden. Just what were your thoughts? Because that's part of what we do here is we talk about the backside of the media world and how these things they can be overwhelming, they can be fun, they're entertaining for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think first just walking in, it was just like, I can't help but be excited to be back, and this is my first full year being here from the jump, and that's a exciting feeling for sure. And just walking in, you see all these stations set up on the practice court. It's first day of school, the reference you've used a lot, I think was definitely very fitting. And then just the aggressive, I think is the word one of you guys used earlier, and I totally have seen scrums that have gone on. It especially started yesterday with Monty and then Mike Brown right after. There's almost like a competitiveness among the scrums with everybody trying to get their answers off. The first two, I didn't get a single question in with Monty or Mike because I think I was still getting my footing a little bit, getting back into the groove of things. And also they were just rapid fire going left and right. And then my phone had a total breakdown and died on me. And it was, I went into a little bit of a panic, and eventually got that figured out and got back into the swing of things. But felt a lot more comfortable today for sure. And yeah, I think just getting a new feel for these different personalities is interesting, and I definitely feel a lot more comfortable. And just noticing little things, like we knew that coming in, like, oh great, what new Davion stories are we going to get about his work ethic? Because there always seems to be those about his crazy work ethic. And then now it seems like another added thing that's going to be fun throughout the course of the year is other people talking about Keegan Murray's personality. Like Kevin Herter had a fun one, who apparently they spend a little bit of time together. Keegan told us today they share an agent and all that, so they spend an okay amount of time together. And Herter pointed out when talking about Keegan's personality, that he's super simple. He's got like 5 foods that he likes. He sticks to the same 5 foods. He's got like 2 hobbies. So I think just picking up on like all these fun things and trying to get a good grasp of these different personalities. And, you know, this is the first time I've dealt with turnover outside of what we saw a little bit at the deadline last year. So seeing the difference between this new group has definitely been interesting, and I was pretty excited.
Brenden and I were we were like Derek Zoolander and Hansel trying to get the file out of the Apple computer, trying to get his phone to turn back on. Like there was nothing we could do.
It was
like,
horrible. I was actually so pissed off.
And nothing. You went from 30% battery to nothing.
And then, by the way, I came over and like I had it plugged in and knew Herter was the last one, so I only stayed for like half of the presser before, and then went to go plug my phone in. And I came back over, and Sean's like, "Hey, by the way, I unplugged your phone because I needed to plug my stuff in."
Yeah. Well, I said you could plug
Sean.
your cord. You could plug your cord into your computer like we all do. I need that outlet.
It was fair.
Sean,
It
big
was
time
funny.
your
It was
ass.
funny.
Big time your ass.
My shit was about to just absolutely crash. I had to load. I mean, I don't know if I'm not a computer guy, but it was like 250 gigs worth of video.
Oh, we just lost Sean.
So, that was tough.
There you are.
Oh,
Now you're back.
There we are. I'm back.
He is
I didn't
still
say
loading that
anything very
video.
interesting.
Yeah.
That video took a toll on the computer. I'll tell you that much. I don't even remember what the question was because I got distracted by people wanting to hear my thoughts on Rihanna at the Super Bowl because it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, he was talking about that today. I saw Sean glaze over and like go into his Rihanna mode.
Oh, I was
lock
like,
screen
oh,
on his
yes.
phone, Rihanna, so people know.
It is. I've showed this before. I can show it again. There she is. I wear this T-shirt proudly. I have many T-shirts of Rihanna. That's my favorite one. It's not the
Yes.
most safe for work, but I like to show it off.
Sean is a man
what was the question?
with many
We'll get to Rihanna
Rihanna
in a minute.
T-shirts. No, the question is like just the feel, the like being back at Media Day, being there. Again, this is the first time in a while that we've actually been able to not have masks on, to like be in there and like commingling with these people, to have actual scrums and all this stuff. It was a little different.
Yeah, and it was still a little different. Like, it's not quite the way it should be.
Should.
I think should, yes, should be, because there is a requirement. There is an expectation when you go into Media Day based off of what Media Day should be. I mean, Media Day is supposed to be this exactly that. Like, you get everything out of the way in one day. You have fun and it's a newness. James loves to use the back to school element. I think there is a little bit of that, but all the silliness, get it out of the way, you know, because not that there's no place for silliness, but that's what Media Days can be very monotonous if it's not done right. And I think, fortunately, you have a team of really good personalities. Can you imagine being in Brooklyn? Because
It was probably entertaining.
Was
No,
know.
it was
In a
awkward.
different way.
I'm going to answer
Yeah.
all those Rihanna questions, I promise. But I'm going to. But first, I think it was. Look, I think it was good. I think it's a good experience for a lot of the media that was there, because for a lot of them, Brenden, and you kind of throw yourself into this as well. They haven't experienced it. They hadn't seen what that's like, what it should be like. Being in a scrum like that was new to a lot of people. I think. I feel like it felt about as normal as it has and as it could be, I think there could have been some more fun that was had. I think could have been a little. It's a long day. It's these players have a lot of stops to make through their photo, their in-house promotions, all the stuff you see when you go to a game and you see them doing all this stuff on the Jumbotron or acting like they're sock puppets in the wind or, encouraging people to ring the cowbell. All that stuff takes place on media day, and there's a lot of activities, a lot of little cool things. And it can be a lot of fun, and those lighthearted moments really break it up. My biggest takeaway is it's not really all that different from previous seasons. I keep harping on that. I feel like the negative guy in the room because a lot of these things, I think people are trying to make, this has a different feel to it. It's like, no, everyone feels good on the first day of training camp. Everyone feels good at media day. They want to get it done quick. The vets come out later. The stars usually come out later. You get your lesser known guys, or they get out there quickly because they don't have as long of a list as some of the star players do. The scrums are what they are. It's fun. It's back to being in a scrum again. That's the way a scrum should sound, only with maybe a little bit more legitimate questions. And I obviously get to cover other sports. NFL locker rooms are back open again. Baseball clubhouses are open again. Things feel about as normal as can be. So it's good that the NBA is following suit, and it bodes well for the season.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I thought that, look, it's a new media team completely, the media relations team. They got, Avery is back for another season after being the intern last year. Michelangelo came back after leaving and coming back, going to Charlotte for, I think, 1.5 2 years. But they have a lot of new people, and I thought they did a really good job. I'll just say that. It's not an easy day. It's really long. There's one person has one player and they're walking them around from station to station. I didn't see anyone really get grumpy. I thought everyone was accessible. I thought that there was some fun things going on with players yelling and screaming. They put out tables for us, which is something for some reason. I don't remember another year where they put out tables for us to actually work on.
Well, they usually don't have room for them. And Media Day in Sacramento is a little easier than Media Day in San Francisco, LA, Atlanta, Chicago, Miami. I mean, it's just different. But
in a 20,000 square foot practice facility, they probably could have figured something out in the past, and they did this time. That was my point. They brought out tables for us. They had power cords and stuff like that already pre-set up. I thought that it went about as smooth as you could possibly get for it being the first time that this group has actually done a media day, and it's a really, really long day for everybody involved. I made sure Brenden met me for lunch, because you don't eat, you don't drink enough stuff. You're just work in work mode the whole time. It's one player after another for 10-minute sessions.
You're not digging a ditch, man. It's not that bad.
It's true, but it's still a grind where you're trying to cut video and you're trying to think of things that can go viral or that are good thoughts, or frame what players' answers in the proper way, and you're trying to churn content the whole time. So I definitely
posting video till 2 a.m. almost 2 a.m. By the way, Skip and Tosh, watch your tone, sir. You're going to catch hands. I will not tolerate the Rihanna hatred.
Sean is going to meet you in Temecula. Okay, so the live show, we're gonna wrap up here in just a minute. But if you're still watching, give us a thumbs up.
Do that.
I don't know how many thumbs up we have. I think someone else might have it up, but give us a thumbs up. We still have 140 people in here, at least right now, and that's really good. So excited about that. Let's see. Outside of that, let's start with final thoughts. Brenden, do you have any final thoughts? I know where Sean's going, so we'll just start with you.
I am excited just for this year in general, honestly. I'm very anxious to get this started, or was, and am now feeling good to be in the groove of things. And I'm sure at some point I'll end up feeling a little bit burnt out, and maybe feel like a break wouldn't be the worst thing. But as of right now, I'm super excited for this year. And I think there's a lot of a reason for the fan base to be excited too. I think that the ceiling of this team is still a question, but we've touched on that before, and I think that there's still a way that this team doesn't make the play-in. But I'm very much looking forward to competitive basketball and seemingly a new culture around this team.
The ceiling is the roof. All right, go ahead, Sean. Go ahead and talk about Rihanna.
Before we get to Rihanna, I have to apologize to weather people everywhere. I pissed them off, including the great Christina Werner at Fox 40 with my hatred towards the rain. That's only me, individual. I prefaced, I know we need the rain. She almost beat me up the other night for saying that I hate the rain, but I do. It makes people drive stupid, and it makes me feel tired.
It was a great opening. I don't know.
Was it? I don't know about great.
It was very strict. I listened back, and I was laughing, and then I played it for my wife, and one of my sons was in the kitchen, and I played it, and we were laughing. I thought it was very funny. You were all over the board. I hate the rain. I don't want to go in there. I'll just sit inside. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
I am stupid, but I'm honest. Yes, Rihanna, thank you. I've been waiting for this for so long because she was supposed to do Atlanta. Maroon 5 and her were going to have a kind of a split. She was going to headline, of course, and then when she didn't, she decided she wasn't. I think they've asked her every single year since then, and she's turned it down. But finally, we get it. I've been praying for this. I used to tweet after every single performance. I would say, that was great. Now, can Rihanna do next year? But then I found out when she turns it down, it's like, well, no, she doesn't want to do it. So I've had a long time to think about what her playlist should be, would be, could be. And I think I've given it a lot of thought. And I think, honestly, you got to start Ponder Replay. You got to do something like that. She's such a feature artist so early on in her career. She is iconic. She's the greatest. And I would say you've got Umbrella, you got to bring out Jay-Z and Travis Barker, that remix, because you're going to have a lot of features. And then you go right into Run This Town. They stay on there. I used to think maybe Kanye West would join her for Run This Town. It's not going to happen. Kanye will not be there for that. So anyway, you do something like that, and then you got to go Calvin Harris, because any of the collaboration there, We Found Love, all that stuff. And then you're either going to end with Diamonds. She's not going to do anything pretty soft. Like, you're not going to see Stay. I like a lot of stuff that isn't the hits. So I like, Love Me Better. I like Love on the Brain. You're not going to have Stay on there. It's too soft. So she's going to go just Diamonds, Disturbia, We Found Love, Lemonade. I want Lemonade. Has to be Lemonade. And then maybe an Eminem reuniting. I don't know.
Sean just spent like $40 million.
I could go 20 minutes on this, James. I could go 20 minutes on this.
I heard you today. I heard
someone
you today
said
talking about it.
Yeah, they said, you're going to go, right? And I said, well, I hope so, because it's on Fox. It's in Glendale. It's right there. We should be covering the Super Bowl anyway. Didn't matter if Rihanna was going to be there or not. We should be there. But even if I wasn't, and they said, oh, are you going to go buy tickets? I said, probably not. And here's why. I sound like Kevin Hart right now. Here's why, though. Because it's going to cost so much money to be in the Super Bowl when I could... Look, every artist outside of like Springsteen and Prince and maybe one other that I can't think of at the moment, when they're headlining the Super Bowl, they usually put out new music right around that time or even right before it. And so that means she's going to tour. Album's got to be coming. She hasn't released an album in so long. Anti was phenomenal. Let's see if we can... Who's on the... Yeah, exactly. We do need an aux cord going right now. But I will say there's probably going to be new music. There's going to be a tour. So I'd take the money that I would have invested in the Super Bowl, and then I would just probably go take 3 stops, maybe 4 stops along the way on the West Coast and check it out. So we probably lost our whole entire audience.
What Sean says is that he's a Rihanna stalker. He has not saved her falling by a pool like he did
I didn't do that.
Paris Hilton, but I feel like there's an opportunity for her to need saving at some point, and it may not be from Sean, and maybe because of Sean. So
I know a guy.
It's okay. Awesome.
It was outstanding. My phone, by the way, absolutely blew up on Sunday. That was crazy, man. That was crazy. I thought the world ended or something, and then when I saw that, I was like, oh boy.
Oh boy.
Doing a welfare check on me to make sure I was okay.
That's right. Sean lost it. Lost his mind. Hey, Royal Rebounds, guys. Hey, how's it going?
Can you imagine if it's raining during the Rihanna performance?
Like, incredible. It's an indoor venue, Brenden.
Yeah.
How dare you?
How dare you?
My bad.
Get your head out of the sand.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, I think that's going to do it. We're going to have a ton of coverage for you nonstop. Like, it's going to be a wild couple of weeks here, and we'll have you covered nonstop. I think the first preseason game is next week, right? Yeah, so it's going to be fun. It's what day?
Monday.
In LA, right?
Yep.
In LA. Okay.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah, and then if no one is streaming it, I'm sure everyone's going to be angry and pissed. There's nothing we can do about it. We'll do the best we can to figure out where it's going to be. But thanks for tuning in to the King's Beat podcast. Make sure to give us a subscription. Make sure to subscribe to the pod. Give us a thumbs up. But also jump on board with the premium subscription to the King's Beat because I'm going to start gating stuff beginning tomorrow. And if you're not a premium subscriber, then you're going to miss out on some of the stuff that we do here on the King's Beat. And that's going to do it. So for Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the King's Pulse podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the King's Beat. See you later this week.